Hi, everybody. Welcome to the FinOps on Azure podcast. It's a real pleasure today to be joined by Anderson Oliveira. Thank you for joining us, Anderson.
Yeah, my pleasure, Mike.
So I kind of had the team reach out to Anderson because Anderson's wrote this brilliant book recently about FinOps with Azure, and obviously there's not that many people who talk a huge amount about Azure, and I'd really consider Anderson to be one of the sort of experts in this area. Anderson, I'm really glad to get a chance to chat to you about the book, and I know we're going to chat about a few other things. Do you want? I think you've got a copy of it next to you, so I don't know if you want to maybe show people the.
The I happen to have a copy here with me. It's the FinOps Ultimate FinOps for Azure, published by Ava Orange. So very happy for this.
We need to make sure
when I started this one day, I was not sure that it would be this thick. But it just happened. You start writing and you see, oh, I need to work about this one thing. I need to talk. Well, if I'm talking about this, I need to talk about that. And then when you see, it went through the roof. The number of pages that you have planned.
Yeah, we need to make sure people know which book they're looking for. I recently had I got a couple of copies for the team to make sure everybody's kind of familiar with everything in the book. So tell me, you're based down in Portugal, from what you were saying earlier. So just tell the audience a little bit about your background and kind of where you're from. How did you get into the FinOps world?
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. I am a chemical engineer by training, but the last time I saw anything related to chemical engineering was in 1999 when I finished the course. Then I started working with projects and in IT projects when I discovered my passion for IT and projects. So since then, I've worked in many projects. Inside projects, the project universe, I got into the universe of PMO, Project Management Office. And inside the PMO, I got specialized in cost and schedule. After that, I've done several projects as product manager. So I got into Agile and things like that. Up until I got to FinOps, which to me was a continuation of this career path. I have more than 25 years of experience, and what amazes me is the relationship between the areas. Because although let's say the details could be different, we deal with the same people or the same roles, like procurement, finance, executives, products, engineering, and all the other allies. So they are basically the same with a topic that is related to finance and cost and things like that. So there are lots of similarities that bridges well to FinOps.
So I think it's a really interesting one, actually. I guess that background where you've worked in a number of different areas is really going to help you with the stakeholder management side of FinOps, isn't it?
Exactly.
So what about your...
me, the stakeholders is really the part that moves FinOps on. Sometimes people are too much hooked to the engineering side. But actually, what really moves the things forward is everything else, especially the leadership.
Yeah. So what about your technical background then for people? So you mentioned you worked in IT for a little bit. What kind of technology areas have you worked in the past?
So I worked with software development, the good and old front end, back end. Then I got into much projects in the data side. So working with Python, with SQL, and all of these things. I really like the organizational part of IT. The frameworks like the Project Management Institute framework, the Agile framework, the SAFe framework. So how do we make humans that deal with IT to work on to make things work. And the projects has to do with this. I also had projects related to infrastructure, the bare metal infrastructure of implementing data centers and small labs completely made of hardware and things like that. So you need to deal with everything else related to computers. I have developed APIs as well for internal use and for external use. All sorts of a little bit of everything. As a project manager, allows us to be in touch with all of this technology. Me personally, I like to code in SQL. I like to do things more related to BI. That's where I hang a little bit. And do you know when you're coding and you kind of relax? That's what that's the area where when I need to do a little project to relax that I do.
So it's really interesting actually when you think about the FinOps personas. I think from the sounds of it, you've either been each of those key personas and stakeholders, or you've worked quite closely with them when you're working as a project manager, which probably really helps you in the FinOps world to kind of put a foot in everybody's position and see it from their angle, which is cool. So tell me about the book then. So what? How did you decide you wanted to write a book, and what was the inspiration for doing it?
Yeah, this book started with my experience in Azure specifically. So on my journey, I worked in IT financial management. And when I went into FinOps, I happened to just work with Azure, learning a lot about Azure, what's going on in there, how organizations use Azure to get to their final results. So I started looking to some patterns related to the usage of the technology together with how you organize the company, the organization. So I know that you can find all sorts of things in there, but I think that this book is really to the FinOps practitioner, the one that will lead the FinOps initiative, or that will manage teams for FinOps, or people that are thinking on building a center of excellence on this area. All right, so it will deal with how you break down your technology in terms of buckets or areas or organizations, how they are managed internally, how you measure that the cost, but not only cost, but also value, which to me is really important in terms of maturity, and tackling on the basics of what every FinOps team should be looking at, which is monitoring and finding anomalies, reporting them internally, create a process so that this information can work around within the organization, and things like real code, quick and easy code in Cusco or and others, so that you can go there and pinpoint what are the main cost optimization opportunities. So you will be someone that is even starting or in the middle of the journey or even advanced can take a look at this and say, okay, this is the things that this is the whole picture, the overall picture of how a FinOps practice should look like in Azure.
Yeah. So when you, I think with the book, I imagine a lot of the readers of the book are going to be people who don't really know a huge amount about FinOps, but are getting asked questions about starting to look at cost on Azure, and are going to be fairly new people to FinOps and see your book as a way of like accelerating that journey. What do you think are the key things people who are brand new to FinOps should focus on to kind of start tackling that cost problem that they probably had that introduced them to your book in the first place?
Yeah, to me, considering that everyone has a tool that allows you to drill down the cost, and of course there are many options out there. I think that the mindset of the project management of that what we call the work breakdown structure. So I, as a PMO, I work with many projects that were struggling with that because they don't know exactly how to break down the cost. And in the organizations, I'm seeing exactly the same thing. So anyone that is starting, even myself, when I'm starting an engagement on a company, the first thing I want to check is how are you structuring your organization? Where are your business units? Are they represented? Secondly, are those buckets or organizations or business units, are there clear accountability established? So that would be the second step. And don't take from granted this effort because it can be huge and it will be much more than technology. It will probably going to have a lot of political conversation. You're going to have a lot of sensitive information because cost sometimes is a proxy to cost sometimes works as a proxy to personal performance. So if you're spending more or if you're spending less, so kind of associate with the how that manager or how that director is performing. So it becomes a little bit a sensitive conversation, different from other metrics like security, that someone will delegate all of that to the engineering team, or performance that would delegate everything to the engineering team. When it comes to cost, it's not only the engineering team. We're talking about product. We're talking about who is in the executive layer is responsible and accountable for those costs. And that conversation is the one that is really needed to have in order to move the maturity of any FinOps practice.
So do you feel there's quite a lot of friction sometimes with stakeholders where it's sort of before, when nobody really knew how much my product cost, then I kind of get away with the fact of not being accountable for it, so it doesn't factor into my performance. But now suddenly, now people know how much it costs, they may know about inefficiencies, and it becomes a friction point for that stakeholder. Is that a common thing you're seeing? It's almost like transparency helps in some cases, but some people don't necessarily want it.
Yeah, because this will always be a trade-off game, in a sense. If you want more performance, probably you're gonna need to spend more. If you want to cut costs, this probably gonna touch in other features or benefits that you were not expecting to be affected. And this conversation needs to be done. There's no right and wrong. It's just trade-off conversations that need to be taken. And when we were living on the CapEx old world, not old, I'm not saying old in a bad way. It's just how we were doing IT 20 years ago, let's say. The cost conversation was not on the table unless you needed to increase the computing capacity or increase network capacity. That would be included on the cost. Other than that, engineers would need to work with the resources that they already have. So that would be the discussion, and cost wouldn't be on the equation. Now on the OpEx world, things goes completely different because every decision, of course, it will be very quick to implement, but it will probably going to have an impact on cost, which requires the organization to be established in a different way. The process, the communications between the stakeholders will need to happen in a different way. And that's what I try to also represent on the book.
So I know we were going to chat quite a bit about the value angle. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on how value comes into this conversation and how it relates to cost, and maybe how you've touched on that in the book.
Yes. It all boils down to the difference between CapEx and OpEx. Now that we are on the OpEx side, we need to focus pretty much on efficiency. Just as any other industry that is OpEx intense, every industry that is OpEx intense knows that they need to run efficiently in order to produce the same amount of value that is out there. What is catchy and sometimes difficult to understand or to capture is how this efficiency is measured in an IT world where you have things pretty much fragmented. Think, for example, if you have an internal service which responsibility is to keep HR personnel records, all right? So what is the value that this system provides to the organization? What is the efficiency measurement in terms of cost that application delivers? Is this going to be per employee or per contact or per number of updates per employee? So what drives the cost of that application in terms of efficiency? And that's not quite easy conversation, because when you have systems that are very close to the bottom end, it's easy. This one generates this amount of revenue, then the cost per revenue is what you're going to get. But when you go down into the corporation stack, this conversation becomes more fuzzy, becomes more not very evident. And that's the challenge that we need to go, is to define what value mean for each service and start tracking that.
So are you thinking there, if I take an example, so if we said we've got the website that captures orders, then we can quite easily work out the revenue from the orders that we get becomes quite an easy metric for value. But if we looked at the company's HR system, if we use the company's revenue or the company's overall profitability, it becomes much more abstract from what the system does, that it becomes, while it's still a measure you could use, it becomes much harder to correlate it to the cost of that system, where the number of employees you're managing might be a better unit of metric.
Exactly. So as this is a conversation that is really, really difficult, and sometimes what you need is a sort of inspiration. One of the things that I put here on my book, and it's also available in some articles, I think, is a list of 35, I think it was almost 40 different unit costs that you can, unit economics. So let me say that again. So I put together on the book almost 40 examples of unit economics, so that you can run through and maybe get an idea of which one could fit well for your specific case. I divided this in two categories: technical unit economics and business unit economics. Business unit economics would be something like cost per revenue or cost per customer. Technical would be like cost per gigabytes, cost per CPU, cost per memory, so and so on and so forth. Because sometimes you can measure value by technical terms, which is very valid. But you can also do that on a business perspective, which is also as valuable.
So when you sort of chat to customers in the real world, one of my assumptions would be, when I do a project to deliver an application, the business case for that application should have sort of some metric that defines success for that application. Do you find in the FinOps world that really exists as a thing that the FinOps team can use, or do you find there's a lot of times companies have gaps where the FinOps team are sort of having to collaborate to figure out what those metrics were because people hadn't really done them in the first place?
Yes, I think that the same technique, in order to define those metrics, they can also be applied on the FinOps. The issue is that we're doing this after the fact. The application is already running. People don't have maybe time to sit down and discuss. So I think it works pretty much like a therapy conversation, because the application is there, all right? Its application is there, and there is a reason for it being there. And I always start with this: what is the why this application is there anyway? There is a reason for it to be there, and that's probably going to give you the first idea of the value that it delivers. All right. Secondly, is to see if the cost is a direct correlation to this value. If it is, that's great, because your unit economics will have elasticity, in the sense that there is a direct connection between the value and the cost. If you increase cost, it's because the value has increased. If the value decreased, then the cost will decrease. So this elasticity is what we're looking for. But I know that not all unit economics has this type of relationship. Sometimes it has the relationship of efficiency. How much I am using of this resource in order to deliver this value. If I deliver more value, can I reduce the cost? But they are not directly correlated. But they are representing the efficiency that you're looking for. All right. So, but if you're able, the dream word would be if you find a unit economics that is both related to elasticity and efficiency, then you found gold. You really found gold.
How do you find challenges where I think sometimes, let's say we have an application that has a licensing and a cloud infrastructure element to it. So I'm thinking a good example might be something like SAP, where I've worked with customers who host SAP on Azure, and you've got like the costs might be partial license, partial infrastructure. One side of it's a bit more elastic than the other, but maybe you're sort of managing how many employees can we have. Do you find those different mixes of costs make additional complexity in that sort of balancing act between cost and value?
It is really a good question. Think about SAP, for example, which is a monolith, and it's there. It will consume exactly what is in there, regardless of what you do. So it will be pretty much more a conversation about efficiency rather than elasticity. So the conversation will be more, okay, can I do the same workload with another set of servers or VMs? Can I make maybe the placement of it in different regions so that I can have the best cost performance? But what about the communication between regions if we want failover? If it's a production or if it's a development environment, can I have different ways to deal with them? So the workload will always be the same, but the way that you handle that could be kind of the driver for the efficiency, in the sense that can I spend less or put together a different architecture in order to deal with this? So in this sense, also one good thing and a good practice is always start with your baseline. When you're starting all of this, just measure that. Probably going to be bad, and it's better that it's bad, because you're going to have room for you to show improvement, and by show improvement, you show the value of your own work. But at least you have a baseline by saying, okay, these actions have caused this impact on the efficiency, so these actions were more efficient, were more effective. The other good thing about this is that this efficiency impact is something that helps you prioritize the amount of work, the activities that you need to perform. if you have one that will have a better impact on efficiency, probably this one gonna take precedence to another one that is not so cost will generate an impact on efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Is there any emerging trends you're starting to see, Anderson, in this area about things that you think people are starting to do differently to what they've done in recent years, or anything you think people will start doing more of in the future? Maybe the way AI plays into this conversation might be a good topic area even.
Yeah, my observations goes more into the lack of maturity in the industry as a whole. Seems that everybody, if I could summarize, of course it's not gonna be fair with companies that are doing great work out there, but in majority of the cases, people are trying to reap the low-hanging fruits, which is a demonstration first that we are early in the maturity, and first that probably we are not shooting to the right thing, in the sense that if we're just looking for the savings, the return over this investment will not have the same rate year by year. Actually, it's the contrary. The savings tends to be less as you go in your FinOps practice. And the other unfortunate trend is that I don't see too much conversations about value or efficiency. I just see conversations about how to cut cost. That's a good way to put your foot on the door by saying, "Hey, I can work in here and save you 30%," and everybody's happy. But the point is that maybe it will help you put on the door, but probably will help you get out of the door pretty quickly, because once you get the savings and you don't do anything else, they will not be happy with you, and so you think that will not go well.
So do you think that's going to be the way FinOps will start evolving as people get further down the journey? The conversation's going to move away from saving and move more into value and return on investment kind of idea?
Yeah, I feel like I have a mission of preaching on the desert by saying, "Hey guys, it's now time to move on. It's time to talk about value. It's time to talk about unit economics. I'm very happy that you're getting those savings, but that's not it. The FinOps means finance with DevOps, but my personal opinion, my personal definition of the FinOps is operations. How can we put finance in operation on an IT environment, on a cloud IT environment?" All right, and there you will not be able to reach that if you don't have an eye on value that is completely different from cost. Sometimes they are the same thing, but in majority of the cases they are not the same thing. All right, so put our eyes on how can we get more value out of the same dollar that we spend on cloud.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know we were having conversations earlier today about other areas where if you work in a marketing team, for example, it's really common people think about how do I, for every pound I spend on marketing, I get £1.20 back in value. And it's interesting that other areas, they really think like that already kind of thing, but IT maybe we're a little bit behind the curve on that kind of idea.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I was just saying how I was having a conversation earlier today in a different area. We were talking about marketing, and I think in marketing, the idea of I get £1.20 back for every pound I spend on marketing in terms of like the value coming back to the business. It's really just an obvious concept in areas like marketing, but in IT, it's not something we really think in those terms, do we? And I think that's kind of the way we need to change the mindset in a way.
Exactly. Maybe a message that we could give for people that are designing an application as we speak especially those that are designing applications that will be there on the bottom of the technology on the organization stack, is to design value, do value by design, or make value as part of your design. Okay, this application will do like this will be with this architecture, this is our strategy to implement, and this is how we're gonna be measuring value. All right. So have this conversation really early.
So do you think there's like a kind of a training area in the architecture community about sort of, if you think of a typical project, how well does the architect of the application really understand the architecture of the business and where the business value comes from? Because I think a lot of the time we're just looking at the technical problem. We need to build an application that efficiently delivers these requirements to these performance constraints, but actually a lot of the time is the way the application generates revenue, creates users, supports the business as maybe an abstract concept from the person who designs the physical architecture. And maybe that's where we need to bring in new training ideas and almost get architects more into the business in a way.
And I'm sure that part of the development or the architecture design will need to include one string or one stream in order to capture on how to capture the value. How do you gonna take this metric and put this inside your dashboards or your reports in order to calculate this against cost? All right, cost will be another way that needs to be also talked about. So in talking about specifically on Azure, when you're implementing this, how are you going to make sure that the cost generated is related to the application that you're generating, that you're creating? If it's taking shared resources from other systems, well, how do you define what is your portion of that? If it's everything on your own contained, is it going to be everything in just one resource group, in one subscription? So with this, you have the cost part. Now you define what is the value part. Okay, I defined that the value is going to be number of customers, let's say. So what is how the stream of customers will flow into your application so that you can have a kind of a real-time value definition or report or efficiency based on the work of your application. All right. If you think this on the design phase, it's much easier than trying to think about it after the fact.
Yeah, definitely. So Anderson, we're just about coming up with time. If you, I think that's a fascinating subject we've just been talking about. It'd be good to kind of, dig a bit deeper, maybe in a feature session or something, just to explore these ideas, because it really kind of touches on my architect background, and it's quite interesting for me. So if we have people listening today who are sort of architects in that area, what's the one little tip or thought you'd like them to go away with to think about that might improve their future life when they suddenly get asked about value and unit economics?
My first tip is make sure that the boundaries of your costs are well established. Number two, make sure that accountability is established both by those that generate costs and by those that are responsible for those costs. And third, make sure that you add the value into it so that you can calculate unit economics. Show your progress based not only on cost reduction, but by increase on your unit economics. So that would be my 3 tips.
So I guess for FinOps, So I guess for FinOps teams, the easy way to kind of start making progress on that is reach out to the architects on the projects you've got currently going on, set up a FinOps profile, and then get that accountability, get the value indicators, get that defined from day one before your project goes live, and that's a significant step in the right direction from a process perspective for your new projects you're going to deliver, isn't it? And at least that means if you start doing that, your FinOps team can go backwards on the stuff you've already got live, but at least the new stuff you're bringing in is going to start fitting into a framework, I guess.
Exactly, 100%.
So, Anderson, thank you very much for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Do you want to stick the book up one more time so people who've got to the end, we can make sure they know what the front cover looks like on the book so they can find it? And all the key book places is where to go. If anybody wants to connect with you to ask questions, I guess LinkedIn's probably the best way to connect with you, is it?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. Send me a DM and I will be more than happy to talk with you directly.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us today, Anderson, and have a great week.